1.5 years of neglect, this is how bad it can be. And if it gets to this state, the first thing you should do is buy a new headset. So I got a message from a friend a week before we were about to head out for a bikepacking trip, saying his headset had seized up and he couldn't really turn the bars anymore. He ordered a new headset. Unfortunately, that would not turn up in time for our ride. So I told him to get the headset over to me and I would see if I could do something about it, at least so he could ride that weekend. So my friend doesn't really ride in bad weather or anything. He keeps his bike pretty clean as well, but he sweats like something from another world. And the state his upper bearing is in is basically due to sweat. So my goal here is just to make this rideable for a couple of weeks. So let's see what we can do. So once I have cleaned off the external gunk and nastiness, which actually smelled, I carefully removed the seals. I used the dull side of a hobby knife. Just be careful here so you don't damage the seals. And once both seals are off, the bearing is ready for another round. So once I tried to spin the bearing actually came apart. The inner race fell out. And I don't think this is supposed to happen. At least this is the first time it's happened to me. As you can see, if you take out the carrier of the bearing balls, you can actually lose some bearings. So I decided to keep the ball carrier in the bearing and try to clean it that way, just because I didn't want to lose anything. And as this is just to make the bearing usable for an extra couple of weeks, I wasn't too worried not going fully crazy and cleaning every individual ball. So at this stage, putting the race back into the bearing, it actually spun pretty good. Not at all close to a normal new bearing, but much better than before. So this next method you might have heard of before, for cleaning everything from chrome to help you with the thirst, and that's using Coca Cola. So this was the last step for the night. I just soaked it in Coke and went to bed. So in the morning before work, I took the bearings out and actually rinsed them in the sink, just to get rid of all the sugar that's probably stuck everywhere on the bearing. That didn't seem to do really anything at all, so I decided to soak the bearings in some degreaser, and this is some weird petrol-like degreaser. I let it soak there while I was at work, and when I came home, all of the degreaser had evaporated, so I decided to do another round of aerosol degreaser. As you can see here on the surface of the bearing, it's very rough, and this is probably a lost cause. So I did one last go with the degreaser and a brush, and that was about how far I wanted to go with this. It spun okay though, so all that's left is wiping everything off and let it dry, using compressed air to help it dry a bit faster. As you can see, the lower bearing spun pretty nice. However, the upper bearing, while it spun, it was very rough, so I would not use this more than I had to, but I figured it would still work for a couple of more rides. So I used Shimano premium grease to repack the bearings. Basically just press in the grease as good as you can. I actually removed the inner race again and put some grease directly on the race, because yeah, why not? Put the race back in and then try to pack it from the outside as well. After it was nice and greasy, I just pushed the bearing seals back on. And then did the lower bearing as well in the same manner. As the upper bearing had a tendency to fall apart, I just wrapped it in some saran wrap and got it off to my mate. He put it back on his bike, and luckily it wasn't any problems. He could use it for the ride that weekend, and I also confirmed that the bars turned without any major problems. Still, you should definitely get a new bearing if it gets this bad. I think that's it for this very long video about some headset bearings, but if you found it interesting or helpful, leave a like and subscribe if you feel like it. Always appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!